Number 10. In Doctor Who, Season 1, the Doctor takes Rose Tyler to see the destruction of the Earth in 5 billion years. However, researchers working with NASA think that the world will actually end in 1 billion years, so 4 billion years less. This will be due to our ever-expanding sun, which will burn off all of the oxygen on our planet, essentially turning into a little fireball before it's consumed. The sun will most likely expand into a red dwarf and literally eat us. Hopefully by then we will have expanded into the universe and inhabited other planets, and you know, like Firefly. It would be awesome if that was real. However, we might destroy ourselves before the sun even has a chance to. So although it is inevitable that the sun will eat us for lunch, what we are doing now might beat it to the punch if we don't do something about it. Number 9. Wandering black holes. Black holes that move? No thank you. They can stay right where they are, except for some of them can't. Scientists always suspected that black holes could travel, but they just haven't found one until March 2020, that is. Yay! Researchers at the Center of Astrophysics, Harvard-Smithsonian finally found a concrete specimen. At the center of a galaxy 230 million light years away is a wandering black hole. It has a mass of 3 million times that of our sun, and it is moving at 110,000 miles per hour. Black holes, due to their sheer mass, are usually just too heavy to get any kind of traction. Imagine kicking a bowling ball versus a soccer ball. Bowling ball is the black hole. But scientists think that it may have gotten its start due to a collision, therefore meaning that it could be part of a pair. So where's the other one? Could it be heading straight for us, ready to suck future generations into oblivion? I guess we will never find out, but they will, so good luck guys. Number 8. Satellite Demolition Derby. I feel like we practically just started going to space. It's only been since the 60s, like 6 decades, like that's insane. Which is why this number blows my mind. In space right now, orbiting our planet, are tens of thousands of pieces of space junk, even millions. There are 2,000 active satellites and 3,000 dead ones just like chilling up there. Now that may not sound like too much of a problem, but it really could be. If they started hitting each other, the results would be disastrous. NASA scientist Donald Kessler in the 1970s proposed that if there was too much space junk in orbit, that a chain reaction could occur. As the junk collides with each other, it could cause even more space junk, making Earth's orbit entirely unusable. As you can gather, this would potentially be catastrophic. For companies like SpaceX, who plan on launching 50,000 satellites for global internet coverage, more obstacle avoidance procedures need to be put in place before that happens. Otherwise, I don't know, I don't want to think about it. It could get really bad. Number 7. Aliens. The wonderful late Stephen Hawking proposed that aliens could be dangerous for us to interact with. If you haven't seen Enter the Universe with Stephen Hawking, you should. It's great. I love it. I put it on in the background all the time. He states that not only do intelligent life forms definitely exist, just probability wise, he does warn that interacting with them could be really dangerous. Quote, "We only have to look at ourselves to see how intelligent life might develop into something we wouldn't want to meet." Unquote. First and foremost, if they actually made it here, then they have technology far beyond our understanding yet. That kind of technology would be pretty intimidating, and consider how well we humans have dealt with meeting new people in the past. Answer, not good. But who's to say these intelligent aliens might not also be looking to colonize and conquer? We could be to them what the Mayans were to Cortez. If it's the other way around and we end up seeking them out first, who's to say history wouldn't repeat itself? You know, especially if we're looking for a new place to live. Ugh. Number 6. Wandering stars. The entire universe is continuing to expand, so that means that everything is constantly moving and could eventually tear apart. But anyways, even our sun is moving. But in relation to us, it isn't moving. However, there are stars that do. They are called wandering stars, and there is one in the Milky Way. What makes this one so dangerous is that it could get so close to our sun that it disturbs the Oort cloud. This cloud at the edge of the solar system is composed of comets, which would come hurtling at us if something were to hit it. Therefore, not a pleasant thing to think about. As we will discuss later, asteroids will not be kind to Earth. Now imagine thousands all at once. Currently though, we are in a region of less dense interstellar gas. Additionally, the wind and solar magnetic field protect us from interacting with the stellar medium. We will probably move out of this in the next 20,000 to 50,000 years, meaning more dangers will come our way. So basically, our sun protects us until something messes with that. Hence, wandering stars are the worst. I won't be around to see that, hopefully not anyways, and you won't me either, but somebody will be, and I hope I don't hope they don't get to see it either. Number 5, supernova. What is a supernova? Well, it's essentially when a star of immense size explodes. Is this potentially deadly? Absolutely. Our sun is expected to die eventually, but probably not for, a billion years as previously mentioned. But what will happen when it does? Well, the entire Earth would burn up essentially as previously mentioned. It would be 15 times hotter than the surface of the sun, but that's not going to happen for a while yet. However, if a supernova occurred some 30 light years away, this could have detrimental effects on Earth now. Possibly mass extinctions, destruction of the ozone layer, therefore leaving Earth vulnerable to solar rays, which would kill us all. The oxygen and nitrogen in the atmosphere could also ionize, meaning our atmosphere would turn into a kind of thick smog. Not a good time, and doesn't sound very good. I don't want to be there. Number 4, gamma ray bursts. Okay, so we just talked about how scary supernovas are. Well, get ready for gamma rays. It's a death ray from space. They are the most extreme explosions in the universe, like a supernova. It's crazy enough to think that our sun could explode within seconds, not anytime soon, but imagine a star several times the mass of ours collapsing into a black hole. This could turn into a gamma ray burst. Essentially, twin beams blast out light so bright that we can see them from Earth, even if they are billions of light years away. So it's like a black hole's in the center and 2 lasers. If you think that's crazy, check out this fact. A gamma ray burst can release more energy than the sun will emit in its entire lifetime. What does that mean? It means death for any planet, asteroid, or spaceman in its way. It's literally like the universe made a lightsaber. Some scientists think that these gamma rays are one of the reasons for the mass extinctions on Earth. Let's hope that's not the case in future. Number 3, solar flares. Okay, so even if you're someone who condemns cell phones and says that the internet is killing our brains, yada yada yada, much of your life still depends on technology. Many people worry that a killer solar flare could destroy our planet, but that's not actually possible. But what is possible is a complete and total blackout. While the heat of a flare can't make it to Earth, electromagnetic radiation and energetic particles can. They can and have messed with the upper atmosphere and disrupted signal transmissions. But that's tame compared to what else could happen. Should a coronal mass ejection, a CME, hit Earth, it's game over for Insta. I will never see you again. Bye bye YouTube. They propel electromagnetic fluctuations that could fry ground level power grids, causing a total worldwide blackout. The largest geomagnetic storm caused by this ever recorded was in 1859. Telegraph networks around the globe failed, operators were shocked, and telegraph paper caught on fire. If we have a storm anything close to that, it could be catastrophic. Number 2, an asteroid. Of course. Ever seen Deep Impact or Armageddon? I have seen both, each only once because they terrified me so much. All throughout our galaxy, throughout the universe, there are wandering massive rocks drifting through space. Some are as large as whole provinces, even countries. At this moment, there are currently 20,000 asteroids in our galaxy that could pose a threat. Now, I assume that scientists actually have a plan for if one starts barreling for us, but it would be incredibly hard to stop regardless. The White House Office of Science and Technology Policy released a report on June 20th in 2018 that detailed the steps NASA and FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, will take to prevent asteroids from striking Earth and prepare the US for the consequences of the event. Side note, I love how Canada always dies in every disaster movie ever. The day after tomorrow, nobody cares about them. We're probably fine though. Anyways, that was a side note, side tangent. Anyways, the US, they are planning ways on deflecting them, as well as developing technology that better predicts the probability that ones will hit. So, maybe we won't be able to stop them, but we'll know they're coming, so I guess we can say goodbye to our loved ones. And last but not least, interstellar clouds. Imagine one day looking up into the sky and not seeing any stars. Or very few at least. Then another night you look into your telescope and you can no longer see Jupiter. The next morning there's a murky darkness over the sky. You realize that no, this isn't a sci-fi nightmare or an episode of Doctor Who. There's no one to save us. What I'm talking about is an interstellar dust cloud that is capable of destroying the Earth. But don't worry, as terrifying as that intro was, we probably won't be alive to see it. Maybe no one will be, who knows. This event will probably happen in a few millennia, but eventually Earth will come in contact with a cloud 1,000 times denser than space. Imagine going from swimming in a pool to swimming in a pile of jello. Yeah. Dust and gas will penetrate our atmosphere and eat away the oxygen. Our planet will then be left vulnerable to solar wind that will come in and tear apart the molecules of life. Something I'm glad I will not be there to see. Number 10. Strange lights. Leroy Chiao was a commander of the ISS for 6.5 months in 2005, and finally opened up about some strange sights he saw. While installing 2 navigation antennas 230 miles above Earth, traveling at 17,000 miles an hour, something was out of the ordinary. Chiao told the Huffington Post, and I quote, "I saw some lights that seemed to be in a line, and it was almost like an upside down check mark, and I saw them fly by and thought it was awfully strange," unquote. However, despite this experience, Chiao still remains skeptical that we have been visited by extraterrestrials. He continues, and I quote, "I'm skeptical of claims that we've been visited by aliens from another planet or dimension, but I don't rule it out 100%. I have an open mind and I do believe there's other life in the universe. If there is life out there that's so much more advanced than we are, and they know either how to travel great distances in short amounts of time, or they're able to come from a parallel universe into ours, why don't they just come out and show themselves?" Unquote. That remains one of the biggest questions in the scientific community, and a lot of us at Most Amazing, we are also very confused. If the likelihood is so high, where the heck is everybody? Number 9. Space serpent. With the amount of space junk that orbits planet Earth, it's no surprise the first explanation for any UFO is a broken satellite or debris from another rocket launch. When Dr. Story Musgrave saw an 8-foot long white snake floating in space, his first thought was that it was some kind of broken tubing. According to an interview with Omni Mag, Musgrave said, and I quote, "On 2 flights I've seen and photographed what I call the snake, like a 7-foot eel swimming out there. It may be an uncritical rubber seal from the main engines. In 0G it's totally free to maneuver and it has its own internal waves like it's swimming. All this debris is white, reflecting sunlight, or you don't see it. Cruising along with you at your velocity, it's still got its own rotation. At 0G things have an incredible freedom. It's an extraordinary ballet." Unquote. But as to what it actually is remains to be confirmed. Yes, it could be the tubing, but who knows. But Musgrave fully believes that there are civilizations much more advanced than us out there and seeks to make contact with them even while retired. Number 8. Yang Li Wei. Do you have that friend that likes to remind everyone while watching like insert space film here that there's no sound in space, so how can we hear the explosion? Everybody's got that friend. Yeah, well, begrudgingly, they're right. There is no sound in space because it is a vacuum. So when Chinese astronaut Yang Li Wei heard a strange knocking on the shuttle he was in, you can understand why he would be confused. Yang Li Wei was the first man to be sent to space via the Chinese space program, but he's not the only one to have heard the sound. From 2005 to 2008, other Chinese astronauts have also reported hearing similar sounds and have no idea what the specific cause is. Maybe it's something to do with the mechanics of their ship, who knows? The leading theory is actually to do with the sound as a result of a decreasing air pressure that changes the structure of the spacecraft. So first it was aliens, now it's actual science. Why not both? Number 7. A little space music. The precursor to the Apollo 11 moon landing was of course the Apollo 10, launched in May 1969. It was a test run in which they sent 2 men up to space in a command module and dropped down to 10 miles above the moon. A pretty high stakes mission overshadowed by the success of the 11 landing. But something that stood out was a strange whistling sound, kind of like weird space music, like exactly how you'd imagine it. They heard it over their headphones and their first impression was that this strange music was sent from ETs trying to phone home, but alas, some hope was shattered. The whistling sound could be explained as interference between VHF radios, so alas, not the explanation we wanted. But hey, imagine hearing that on a test mission. Pretty eerie. Number 6. An unidentified flying UFO. What? It's just a matter of time before actual UFOs break the mold as to what we think they look like. Saucer-like with a bubble on top. Yeah, that stuff is cliche. James McDivitt and Ed White were the first to realize this when they saw one of the strangest things below them. While flying over Hawaii in June 1965, he spotted a strangely shaped ship approaching the Gemini 4. According to James, and I quote, "It had a rather definite form, a cylindrical object that was white and had a long arm stuck out to the side," unquote. So kind of like a flying cigar. When he got back to Earth, he was eager to see what he had shot to get a closer look, but when he got there, he was shown an entirely different section of film. He said it was whited out and that it looked nothing like what he'd seen. There was also a hole poked through the film. Number 5. Corpse in the sky. This next one actually is definitely not alien, but it is really sad. So before humans went to space, they had to test it on animals, which is not great. Chimpanzees, dogs, cats, and even fruit flies. right? Many didn't survive, of course, because of the nature of trial and error. The Albert project was one of the most prolific projects and was made of the first astronauts on Earth, mainly and also just exclusively chimps, named Albert. As many of them did not make it back safely, some of their ships even split apart. Their corpses actually circle the orbit of Earth. On top of that, some human beings have passed whilst in space, and any remains that were not recovered also circle the Earth. So despite not being alien or unknown, it is pretty creepy to be flying within a floating cemetery. Number 4. Space bugs. In previous videos, I think I gushed about the fairy tale romance between astronaut John Glenn and his wife Annie. It's super cute, but I'll leave that for another time. One of the first astronauts, John Glenn, saw something astounding in space while orbiting our planet in 1962. While soaring over Australia, shock almost took him over as he saw something strange fluttering before him. Tiny little lights like tiny fireflies almost danced around the Friendship 7 capsule. When he tapped on the window though, they flew off just like insects would. NASA was at first concerned because they thought that it was a result of the heat shield, that the little lights were fragments burning up, but that didn't check out. The next explanation they prepared was that they were actually very tiny ice particles, but up until his death in 2016, Glenn was never really fully sold on the explanation. He always held on to the idea that they were something friendly or curious that visited him. Number 3. A brilliant flash of light. On May 5th, 1981, a Russian astronaut experienced a strange encounter and still can't explain it. He couldn't pass it off as space debris or a satellite because it actually interacted with him. At 6 p.m. that night, as he was flying over South Africa, a strangely shaped ship was flying alongside his ship. It hovered there watching him and then let out a small explosion followed by a second. After the second explosion, another craft appeared suddenly. But even stranger, there was a third flash, after which both crafts disappeared. The astronaut to this day has no explanation for what he saw. He reported that, and I quote, "The object resembled a boom. I saw it become transparent as if it had a body inside. At the other end I saw something that looked like a gas discharge, like a jet object," unquote. The body inside points to something very strange indeed, but just what, we will have to wait to find out, because maybe one day whoever it was will come and visit us and have coffee. Number 2. The weather balloon. I wonder if astronauts ever feel like they aren't doing enough, or if they're not living life to the fullest, you know? Like, I mean, it's pretty hard to say you wasted your life on the couch when you've just, you know, gone to space. Donald Slayton grabbed life by the horns and accomplished many incredible feats within his working life. But one discovery continues to stump him to this day, and it happened before he was even in space yet. In 1951, Slayton was testing a P-51 fighter and was flying at 10,000 feet when something caught his eye. It looked like a weather balloon, but at the same time unlike any weather balloon he'd ever seen. It was moving really fast as if it was being accelerated by something. Then, almost as if it saw him coming, the object pulled a quick 45-degree turn and sped away. And last but not least, they're watching us in our number 1 spot. I think the thing that freaks me out about the argument that aliens are already here is that they're just like chilling, watching us, waiting for whatever they're looking for, I guess. What are you waiting for? What are we ready for? I don't know. If you believe the moon landing hoax, then you may find this fact impossible to believe, so it's up to you. According to history, Neil Armstrong was the first man to walk on the moon. Well, the first human man. Human thing, human person, human being. Anyways, NASA lost transmission for apparently 2 minutes, but then a secret message was sent to the space station. Allegedly, Armstrong was heard saying, "These babies were huge, sir, enormous. Oh God, you wouldn't believe it. I'm telling you, there are other spacecrafts out here, lined up on the far side of the crater's edge. They're on the moon, watching us," unquote. Apparently, Armstrong saw lights peeking out of one of the craters. When they asked for more detail, however, the transmission went dead for a full minute.
Kicking off the list at number 10, the Pluto Slug. Back in January 2016, the New Horizons probe was sending tons of new information back from our little ex-planet Pluto. The icy plain shows a series of lines, almost like these giant space slugs, dare I say, are slowly moving across the surface of the planet. Check it out. It reminds me of the episode of SpongeBob where the gang, rides a rock across the ocean floor. Maybe Patrick and SpongeBob are delivering a pizza on Pluto, okay? They could be just in the weeds, they could be busy. This icy area of the dwarf planet is called the Sputnik Planum. Scientists believe so far the reason for all these lines is that the planet is breathing in a way. If that sounds creepy, it's because it kind of is. The planet's cooling and heating and it's kind of moving around. But we'll leave some room open for space slugs because, you know what, at this day and age, you never know. I've seen enough Avenger movies, I'm like, could be space worms. Number 9, Mima's Moon. A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Just kidding, this one's actually really close. It's Saturn, it's right there. Saturn is known for having a plethora of moons. Saturn in total has 82 moons, including This one, Mimas. A moon that looks oddly familiar. Why do I feel like it's gonna just blast us all to smithereens? Why do I feel like that's gonna happen? Is that the Death Star? Is this thing pointing at Earth? Which way is it pointing here? That really matters. Saturn's smallest innermost moon is causing quite the stir here on Earth. About a month ago, researchers discovered that this moon has a bit of a wobble to it, almost like a floating magic 8-ball. Something is sloshing around inside. Its gravitational pull is a little off. It's just grooving around in the solar system, you know? Mima could potentially be housing a liquid ocean. Yep, we got more water in space. It's pretty close too. If that was the case, everything we know about water and ocean life in space would have to be rewritten. Number 8, black hole helix. Imagine peering through a telescope, and then you see this. I would throw up right into my telescope. This is a galactic jet. It shot out of a black hole at the center of the M87 galaxy. It's pretty scary looking. This helix shot out a whopping 8,000 light years. Yeah, it's pretty far. That's so far I can't even fathom how far that is. You know, like my brain won't allow me to really picture that. This sounds like a threat, really, but I'll remind you that the M87 galaxy is 55 million light years away from us, so we're not gonna get any galactic jet on our hands anytime soon. Know what I mean? But just how does something like this happen? Astronomers in New Mexico discovered that this massive jet is caused by a corkscrew-shaped magnetic field. What in the witchcraft? Like what? Like a space undertow made out of gravity. That doesn't sound jarring at all. According to the National Radio Astronomy Observatory, this is the longest magnetic fields ever found in a galactic jet. Which is fine. That's the first time I've heard of that. I'm like, you can take that rain. Enjoy it. We're not gonna try and beat you. It's stuff like this where I ask myself why I'm worrying about a phone bill. Humans are so tiny compared to this. It's insane. We don't matter. Hey, number 8, we don't matter. Hit that thumbs up. Number 7, Jupiter's clouds. We've all seen and heard of Jupiter's big red spot. That's just a nightmare in itself. So big, always going, no idea why. Can't even think about it. But when NASA's Juno spacecraft passed the Goliath back in 2017, it captured something almost just as interesting, if not more, dare I say. Jupiter's clouds. It feels like you can just put your arm out and touch the silky space sky. It's beautiful, but that's about 20,000 kilometers away. It's also quite scary. This big ball of hydrogen is quite mysterious below these clouds. So far, NASA has found lightning higher up than they ever thought it could go. They've also found constant storms at both the North and South Pole, and winds so powerful that the planet's magnetic fields are literally being moved around. That's how strong the wind is. Your skin would just blow off. You'd be a skeleton just standing there. Beautiful, mysterious, and deadly. We love space on MA10. Number 6, Mars trees. This looks like moldy bread almost. What in the hell? What are we looking at here? Is this actually a real photo from Mars? Are those trees? There's not a chance here. Matt Damon grew potatoes on Mars in the movie The Martian, but I don't think he can grow any pine trees anytime soon. What you're looking at here is still pretty insane. Due to the evaporation of carbon dioxide frost, dark sand is sliding down the frosted side of the dune, so it makes it look like there's trees on the planet Mars. Sun-heated carbon dioxide ice. That's just, I read that and I go, what? What does that even mean? Where do I start with this? We thought we found a giant alien back in 1976 when NASA's Viking 1 flew by and it looked like a face was in the planet. Remember that? It looks like a Jabberwocky. It's just lying getting a suntan. This one here isn't an optical illusion, it's just weird space science. Number 5, smooth moon. When we think of moons in the sky, or like how other planets have other moons, we think of them as our own. Just a big ball of cheese in the sky, a big sphere, it's got craters, it's pale, we get it, right? Well, as we've seen so far in this list, some moons can look like the Death Star, and some moons can look like chewed gum, apparently. Saturn's small moon Atlas looks like a UFO. It's not a sphere at all, it literally has the shape of a UFO. How scary is that? NASA's Cassini spacecraft caught this image back in 2017, and it almost looks like two moons have crashed into one another, and then now it has a ring-like edge to it. When new photos came back after discovering this moon way back in 1980, scientists were surprised that this moon is actually really smooth. In 4K, they're like, oh, it's not even the pixels, it's actually really smooth. A smooth moon, you say? Let me take a look here. This little smooth moon in the sky, little pervert. Number 4, dead galaxies. This one sounds scary. Dead galaxies. Guardians of the dead galaxy. New research from NASA, including the Hubble Space Telescope, along with the Atacama Large Millimeter Submillimeter Array in northern Chile, they found 6 different dead galaxies in total. They're all like, that's 1, that's 2, and they're like, hey, we found 4, all dead, horrifying. How does this happen? Let's look into it. These dead galaxies had run out of the cold hydrogen needed to make stars, and without the fuel for new stars, these galaxies were basically running on nothing at that point. It's kind of like when your car battery dies, only this is on a cosmic scale. This discovery led us to new questions we didn't even know we had. Like, what led to these galaxies to die anyways? What happened to all the cold gas in them so early on? These 6 galaxies lived fast and hot lives, but we aren't sure what went wrong quite yet. Lead author and assistant professor of astronomy at the University of Massachusetts, Kate Whitaker, she proposed several potential explanations and gave us insight onto the future of the studies, which she said, did a supermassive black hole in the galaxy's center turn on and heat up all the gas? If so, the gas could still be out there, but now it's just cold. We need Thanos to come back and just, start this fire up. Just someone get a Bic lighter and just go and just light it back up. Alas, new life. Is that Thor? Welcome back. Number 3, solar flares. Our lives literally revolve around the sun. It blesses us with life energy, solar rotation, and most importantly, tan lines, obviously. But sometimes she acts up. Sometimes she gets a little cray-cray. Sometimes she gets a little and then she spurts out lava and scares us all. Sometimes she creates these powerful magnetic fields that create sunspots larger than our entire planet. Yep, like I said, she's moody. This creates a stream of radiation. It's called solar wind. Now, normally this is a beautiful event to see. We have many photos of it now. The northern lights happen because of Earth's magnetic field reacting to this specific radiation. Beautiful, but really scary when you think about it. This past October, a large solar flare was spotted, and then 3 days later, it finally hit Earth. The geomagnetic storm reached category G2, which out of 5 is pretty strong, especially when you look at it as on a planetary scale. The biggest solar event was back in 1859. It's called the Carrington event. It was strong enough to disrupt telegraph communications, even literally shocking some telegraph operators. Like, if that happens again, and it's even stronger this time, we're looking at huge power outages on a massive scale. Imagine talking to someone on your iPhone and it blows up. Right in the middle of Avatar 2, boom, blackout. Life as we know it is now meaningless. We're all crying in public. Number 2, the space crab. Is the multiverse collapsing? What is this? The appropriately named Space Crab Nebula was discovered back in 1054. Yeah, way back then, astronomers looked into the sky and saw this new bright star. They saw it during daytime. That's how they knew something was up. What they were observing at the time was a supernova explosion. How spectacular is that? This was when the Crab Nebula was born. It's not too far away either. It's just a mere, 6,500 light years tucked away in the constellation Taurus. If you're a Taurus, you're watching, you're like, oh, no way. I'm a Libra. I'm like, get out of here. What do you know? The image of the space crab here was captured over the course of 3 months. NASA put together 24 exposures captured by, of course, our Hubble. The orange glow we see, those are literally star remains, just large pockets of hydrogen. The interesting part here with the space crab is back in 2005, over the course of 10 Hubble exposures from September to November, these waves can be seen expanding outwards, waves coming from the nebula's pulsar. Space is so scary. We have one moon to worry about here. Meanwhile, all of this is going on in our space neighborhood. I'm terrified. And finally, number 1, mystery wave. More waves coming in hot. Really hot this time around. If you've seen Interstellar, this next one should hit close to home. I'm not a fan of wave pools or waves in general. My stupid head just bobbing around in the ocean, that's peril. That's a nightmare situation. I can't swim too well. I don't know, I'm too lanky. I'm like a piece of seaweed floating around. The largest wave ever seen in the entire solar system, of course I had to save this one for last. On a planet a little closer to the sun, Venus, the pressure in the atmosphere can cause some massive waves. Back in 2015, a Japanese spacecraft zoomed by and caught this phenomena. Usually clouds there will move around 100 meters a second, but these clouds, these massive ripples, stayed in the same place for 4 days. Way above the ground level also. They were just like, huh? And then they got stuck there. Due to a runaway greenhouse effect, temperatures on Venus hit around 460 degrees Celsius. So this wave may have been powerful enough to change the climate for those 4 days. Pretty crazy. I feel like Canada, we get a lot of weather changes, but this is next level.
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have the wandering black hole. If you keep up with space news, you'll know that lately, and rightfully so, it's been flooded with news of the James Webb Telescope as it unfurls and reaches its destination at L2. But while this is exciting and very promising, we have to take some time to remember our roots. The James Webb was preceded by the infamous Hubble Space Telescope. The Hubble walked so James Webb could run. Since its launch into low Earth orbit in the 1990s, this space telescope has been delivering us amazing space discoveries, and this one is a bit of a frightening one. Back in 2017, the Hubble located a black hole, which is already frightening, but this one was peculiar. That is because they found that this one was basically being pulled or manipulated by gravitational waves. Basically what this means is that at some point this black hole is going to escape its own galaxy and begin roaming into the universe. Black holes are bad enough, I don't want them to start wandering around. The good news, however, is that despite this black hole weighing approximately the same as 1 billion suns, as it flies through space at 5 million miles per hour, it's estimated to be about 8 billion light years away from Earth, so we're pretty safe at this point. In our number 9 spot today, we have the Trementina Base. This is a location that was, of course, discovered using satellite imaging, and you might be wondering what this base holds that makes it so unsettling. Well, that is because this is the location that belongs to the Scientology-affiliated Church of Spiritual Technology. If you are unfamiliar, Scientology is a set of beliefs and practices that were invented by L. Ron Hubbard, and it has been variously defined as a cult. The core belief of this group is that humans are immortal and that our bodies are essentially just a shell to house us. There's also some alien stuff in there I'm not quite so sure about. This group is quite controversial, not only for the beliefs of the group, but because of their illegal activities that also occur, like fraud or spying on the government. There have been numerous superior court judgments which have not only called this group a dangerous cult, but also a manipulative, profit-making business as well. So this base is said to belong to the Church of Spiritual Technology, and they are said to be an entity that was formed to manage the copyright affairs of the Church of Scientology. This base is supposed to provide storage space for an archiving project, which is meant to preserve founder L. Ron Hubbard's writings, films, and recordings for future generations, which is definitely a terrifying thought. It is said that these texts have been engraved on stainless steel tablets that are encased in titanium capsules and held underground. Maybe a little overzealous if you ask me. In our number 8 spot today, we have Stereo A. The Solar Terrestrial Relations Observatory, or STEREO for short, is a solar observation mission that was first launched in 2006. The mission saw the launch of 2 spacecrafts, STEREO A and B, and they were sent into orbit around the Sun. This has caused the spacecraft to pull ahead of and fall behind the Earth, which has given them the opportunity to use their stereoscopic capabilities to get imaging of the Sun, as well as phenomena such as coronal mass ejection, which is exactly what we are here to talk about today. In July of 2012, there was a CME, often referred to as a sort of solar superstorm, that tore through Earth's orbit, but luckily Earth wasn't there. The same couldn't be said, however, for the Stereo A spacecraft, as this storm and the craft collided. If this event had occurred just 1 week prior to when it did, Earth would have been right in the midst of it, however, so we were pretty narrowly missed. The Stereo A spacecraft has been able to remain operational despite this hot encounter. In our number 7 spot today, we have the Lost City. In 2011, archaeologist Sarah Parcak used high-resolution and NASA satellites in order to look for subtle differences on the surface of the Earth, and she used this in order to pinpoint the locations of buried ancient pyramids, towns, and ancient tombs in Egypt. This would allow her and her team to find these spots from thousands of miles away so that they could then go and excavate them. While this method led to many amazing discoveries, perhaps the most notable of all is the discovery of a 3,000-year-old Egyptian city. She and her team had found the lost ancient city of Tanis, which lies about 2 hours northeast of Cairo. Through this satellite imaging, she was able to find networks of streets and such that are completely invisible from the ground. The imaging also shows that the city is filled with underground tombs as well. Sarah explains why she enjoys what she does so much, saying, quote, "What's incredible about archaeology is literally every day archaeologists are making headlines by making the most incredible discoveries." Well, Sarah, this is certainly one of them. In our number 6 spot today, we have whales. There are quite a few satellites that orbit our Earth, and there has been for years, but as time goes on, we find new ways to use the information that they give us. According to an article written on January 20th of this year, there is a new study that is showing how, as satellite imagery improves, it is being used to accurately identify whales that have been stranded on beaches. The article goes on to explain why this is important, saying, quote, "For as long as humans have been monitoring the ocean, the only way we've known about stranded whales was to stumble upon them ourselves. But knowing about stranded whales, including where and when they strand and how many are ashore, is vitally important. Largely due to human causes such as ship strikes, pollution, and entanglement in fishing gear, whale strandings are on the rise. Their occurrence can often signal that something is amiss and hint at a larger ecosystem problem, such as a harmful algal bloom, yet the ground-based networks used to monitor stranded whales are biased towards wealthy, highly populated regions. It is very true that despite their enormous size, many of these creatures that wash up on remote coastlines or in resource-limited nations or in countries experiencing conflict end up going completely unnoticed. In our number 5 spot today we have the SS Yasim wreck. The SS Yasim was a Bolivian cargo ship that sank on the evening of December 1st, 2003. For a while no one was quite sure as to why it sank, as well as the fact that no one could find the wreck. This is exactly why it was so surprising when, a few years ago, the Google Maps team located the sunken vessel based on their satellite imaging. The ship was found on its side, perhaps in the same location it initially sank, in Wingate Reef just off of the coast of Sudan. This wreck then became one of the largest visible on Google Earth until quite recently. In our number 4 spot today we have the Lake of Blood. This is another find that came as someone was scrolling along and looking at all there is to see on Google Maps all the way back in 2007. This is when they noticed a blood-red lake that sat just outside of Sadr City in Iraq. Many people began to speculate what this could be about, including a ton of macabre ideas. There was even a rumor going around that said a local slaughterhouse in the area would sometimes dump their blood into canals, but this seems a little unnecessary and very unlikely. There hasn't yet been an official explanation for what exactly made the water so red, but it's most likely that the red color is due to sewage, pollution, or possibly some sort of water treatment process. I can understand why the startling image would get people's imaginations going, but it is likely a pretty reasonable explanation. In our number 3 spot today we have the Gobi Desert structure. This is one discovery that had conspiracy theorists' minds absolutely swirling. About a decade ago, someone was searching through some Google Maps images when they found a mysterious array of structures and patterns that appeared to be etched into the surface of the Gobi Desert, which is located in China. The structures are reminiscent of geoglyphs, but are seemingly much more modern and newly created. The speculations of what this structure could be or why it was created went wild, with people saying that they were street maps of American cities or messages either to or from some sort of extraterrestrials. The list of bizarre theories just goes on. While this is still sort of conspiracy sounding, this is likely the most reasonable explanation for what these structures are, and that is that these structures are used to help calibrate China's spy and radar satellites. To be fair, this does make a lot of sense, and I don't have any other ideas for what it could possibly be. In our number 2 spot today we have Leo 1. So, we live on Earth, which is one of the planets in our solar system, and our solar system sits in a galaxy that we call the Milky Way. There are other galaxies out there that are potentially similar to ours, but there are also things called satellite galaxies. So you know how our solar system is a solar system because we are bound to and orbiting around our sun? Well, basically these satellite galaxies are like that, but with bigger galaxies. Like, they orbit around our galaxy. It's a whole thing about gravity and all of that sciencey stuff, but in the end, here in the Milky Way, we have about 50 satellite galaxies that orbit us, and the particular one I want to talk about right now is called Leo 1. We started investigating this specific one because of the fact that researchers realized that it doesn't contain a lot of dark matter. While studying this galaxy, it was found that although it is small, it has a massive black hole at the center of it. Like, it's so big in comparison to the galaxy itself that this black hole is almost as big as the one we have here in the Milky Way, which is unprecedented data. This discovery could lead scientists to redefining what their understanding is of how all galaxies formed. The galaxies are the building blocks of the universe, so this would be immensely interesting and important information, and it could change a lot of what we once believed. In our number 1 spot today we have the missing hiker. This one is a little different from the others on today's list, but it's a super interesting story that involves using satellites, and I had to share it with you. A man by the name of Ben Kuo has a hobby where he enjoys looking at different satellite imagery in order to look at all places all over the world. He has said, quote, "You can look and see what's going on in the world no matter where it is. It's kind of fascinating what you can see." He then went on to describe how it's kind of trivial, but he loves it, and in this case it was more useful than trivial. The case he is referring to took place in April of 2021 when a hiker named Rene Campion got lost in the Angeles National Forest. While lost with little reception and low battery on his phone, Rene was able to send one photo to his roommate, which he sent in hopes to give a clue about his location. The photo showed his legs with a sort of canyon below, and while I look at the photo and go, okay, he's somewhere that has rocks, I guess, people like Ben see this as a stellar clue. Ben said, quote, "Actually, I looked at the picture and I said, I bet I can find where this guy is." Ben used his own knowledge of hiking trails in the area as well as sites like Google Earth and EO Browser in order to zero in on where the missing hiker could be. It took Ben about 20 to 30 minutes to find what he thought was the location of the missing person, and he passed along the info to the search and rescue team. In the end, when the sheriff's department went out to investigate, they found the missing man less than a mile from where Ben suggested he might be. Once found and informed of how they located him, Rene said, quote, "I was like, wow, I didn't realize somebody had a hobby doing stuff like that. I owe him my life and everybody else that was involved in helping."
Starting off this countdown, we have Jupiter's ionosphere. This eerie recording was recorded by NASA's Juno spacecraft in February of 2017. This is the sound of the plasma waves in Jupiter's ionosphere. And let me tell you, it's eerie. It starts off as just like a plain, almost static sound. Then it picks up and sounds like roars. Now that's not even that bad, I will admit. The freakiest part though is when it captured what sounded like someone moaning or groaning in pain. Listen carefully. It happened pretty fast, but you can hear like a sound. That same low grunt happened several other times throughout the recording, and they don't know what it's from. Obviously NASA is like, oh, it's just the natural sounds of Jupiter, but everyone else is like, aliens! In our ninth spot today we have the knocking sound. Back in 2003, astronaut Yang Liwei became China's first man in space. In 2016, Yang revealed during interviews how terrified he actually was up in space by himself. In fact, he told his creepy story of the unknown knocking sound he heard. So basically he claims that he heard, and I quote, "someone knocking the body of the spaceship just as knocking an iron bucket with a wooden hammer. It neither came from outside nor inside the spaceship. He looked outside of the porthole but never saw anything tapping on the spaceship. Since his return to Earth, they still haven't figured out what caused this sound. They even tried to recreate the sound and scenario, but all attempts failed. The only theory is that it happened as a result of the expansion or contraction of the spaceship. Or ghost aliens messing with us." In our eighth spot today we have the Roswell rock. This is an object that is believed to have been from space. I mean, we get pieces of meteorites all the time, so this space rock shouldn't be unusual, right? Wrong. This rock is unusually smooth and uniform in color. It's just way too perfect. On top of it, the rock has a design protruding from the surface of it. Now, it was given the name the Roswell rock because it was found in Roswell, New Mexico, which has had its fair share in alien UFO sightings. So it might have been left by some ETs or something. Upon analyzing the rock, researchers have realized that the rock's design actually matches a crop circle that was found in England in 1996, which makes this whole thing that much weirder. Some are convinced that this rock is some message sent by aliens. Not only that, but the rock has some weird magnetic properties to it. It's unlike anything they have ever seen before. Linda Moulton, along with other researchers, believe that it's some message sent from aliens or someone or something in space. As for what it means, one theory is that the rock contains a date for some event that has or will happen. Moving on at number 7, we have Europa. Europa, otherwise known as Jupiter 2, is the smallest of the 4 moons orbiting Jupiter. Back in 2017, when the Galileo spacecraft flew by the moon, it picked up some weird signals. Kinda creepy and alien-like, not gonna lie. But wait until you hear the screams it picked up. Yes, you heard me correctly, it picked up something that sounds like screams. NASA claims it's just the sounds of the plasma waves interacting with Earth's magnetic fields that somehow created a strange whistling noise that sounds like an alien screaming. Or it could just be an alien screaming. Coming in at number 6, we have the Voyager plasma sounds. That's one way to hurt your eardrums. This sound was recorded by Voyager 2 as it passed by the outer magnetosphere in 1979. This is the sound created, and I quote, "at a special frequency in the plasma with a magnetic field. The frequency is set by the number of electrons in a given volume and the strength of the magnetic field." That's what NASA had to say about it. Now the last couple of seconds sound almost like birds singing in the morning. But as we all know, there are no birds in space. Unless, are there alien birds? We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the Dropa disks. Hands down, this object came from space and is a message sent by aliens. So in 1938, an archaeologist led an expedition near the Bayanhar Mountains in China. While there, they came across some ancient caves that had these weird discs buried in there. These discs were over 10,000 years old and resembled phonograph records. So they were like, wait a minute, what if it is a record and holds some kind of message? So then they were placed on this like special turntable, and the discs would vibrate / hum in a weird rhythm as if an electric charge was passing through them. To make things weirder, the discs had images carved into them. The drawings told a story about a spaceship that crashed into the mountains. Coincidence? I think not. So theory goes that these records contained some sort of message from aliens that we have yet to solve. Moving on to number 4, we have the Hubble. When I say that this is the scariest space recording I have ever listened to, this is the scariest space recording I have ever listened to. So that was recorded by the NASA Hubble Space Telescope. It's the sounds from the Helix Nebula, which is 655 light years away. Now space has no sounds, and clearly these audio recordings dispute that, but no, what they did is use sonification to figure out what it would sound like if it did produce sounds. And then this clip went viral on Twitter because it sounds like a scary woman screaming. At first, I thought it sounded like that damn ghost from Scooby-Doo. You know, hey!
Get out of here!
But then you hear that scream, and that's enough to send shivers down anyone's spine. Moving on to number 3, we have the unexplained music. So back in 1969, during the Apollo 10 space mission, the astronauts on board the shuttle claimed to have heard eerie music as they circled the moon. It happened when the astronauts were on the far side of the moon and lost radio and visual contact with mission control. They were alone for about an hour just traveling along listening to this spooky music, which today still hasn't been solved. The astronauts described it as unusual whistling noises or space music. In fact, the astronauts debated telling mission control about it. They feared they wouldn't believe them and that they wouldn't be taken seriously on future space missions. Although we don't have a concrete answer for what the sounds could be, theory goes that the noises were a result of radio interference, whereas others believe it was some sort of message from aliens. Or maybe it was aliens blasting their music just having a party on one of the planets, and then we rudely interrupted them. Coming in at number 2, we have the Space Shuttle Columbia.
Just taking a few hits here. We're right up on top of the tail. Not too bad.
Max flight.
Flight max.
And there's no commonality between all these tire pressure instrumentations and the hydraulic return instrumentations.
No, sir.
On February 1st, 2003, the Columbia Space Shuttle was destroyed upon re-entering Earth's atmosphere. All 7 individuals on board sadly lost their lives. The signals and messages they sent to Mission Control while this was happening was horrifying. NASA released the transcript as well as some of the final messages of the astronauts, and just hearing it is heartbreaking. Basically, Mission Control started noticing a bunch of things going wrong with the craft. The individuals on board tried to stay calm and think positively, but they just kept getting worse and worse news from Mission Control.
Ecom.
I'll get 4 temperature sensors on the bond line data that are off scale low.
Columbia out of communications at present with Mission Control as it continues its course toward Florida.
I didn't expect this bad of a hit on comm.
The saddest part was towards the end of the recording, they keep sending messages to the space shuttle, but all they hear is silence. That's when entry flight director Leroy Kane says, "Lock the doors."
Flight GC, lock the doors. Copy.
This means nobody leaves Mission Control until everyone finishes their reports and written accounts of what they just witnessed. They knew that this was the end of the crew and the mission. And in our number 1 spot we have the Cassini spacecraft. Back in 2004, the Cassini spacecraft went into orbit around Saturn. It was on a mission to study Saturn's rings and moons, you name it. But while out there, it picked up some creepy emissions. They then altered the emissions so that they could be heard by the human ear, and what they captured is quite eerie. The sound was pretty much constant, like it gets louder at some points, but I'm sure you all heard that weird split second of a different noise. I have no clue what on earth that was, and maybe I don't ever want to even know.
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have space roar. You would think that space is silent, right? I mean, it's a vacuum, so it should be, but that is not the case. It is said that the entire universe is alive with sound, and there is a thing called space roar. Space roar apparently isn't an everyday sound and is rather these strange radio signals that scientists have detected throughout space. These signals are so loud that they are able to drown out other signals, which can be quite annoying for the scientists who are trying to study and learn. While we know what the sound is, we don't know where it is coming from. Apparently some people believe it was coming from the leftover radiation from early stars, and some others believe it is from the gases swirling around the galaxy in clusters, but at the end of the day, no one is really sure and it remains one noisy mystery. In our number 9 spot today we have light shifts. In 2015, a Penn State astronomer named Jason Wright explained that there were pretty erratic and spontaneous shifts in light that were coming from a star that was newly discovered. This star sits about 1,280 light years away from us on Earth, and these shifts were very similar to as if something was passing in front of our view of the star briefly before then passing through. Scientists weren't able to connect this to any exoplanets or anything like that, which we could understand, and this is what led Jason to quite an interesting theory. He stated that it is possible that the shifts are caused by massive objects passing in front of the star in a kind of orbit, like an array of massive satellites or a similar kind of structure. Like the type of thing that would be produced by an intelligent and civilized life form. You see where I'm going. In our number 8 spot today we have the lone survivor. This is an unexplained signal that was first detected in 2003 when astronomers were using a massive telescope in order to re-examine 200 different areas of the sky. I say re-examine because these were areas where there was once a signal that was detected coming from them, and they were taking a look back to see if they could detect the same signal again. During this re-examination they found that all of the signals had disappeared, well, all except for one. This signal didn't only stick around, but it got stronger. This signal is coming from between the constellations of Pisces and Aries, and the curious thing about this location is that it resides in a place where there are no known obvious planets or stars. To make things a little more mysterious, there are scientists who believe that the frequency this signal is in is the frequency alien life would be most likely to use if they were trying to contact us. I have no idea what leads them to that theory, but it felt too interesting to exclude. So while there are other possibilities of what these signals are or where they're coming from, it is quite an interesting piece of information and is something that definitely deserves a little more looking into. In our number 7 spot today, we have the Milky Way radio burst. On April 28, 2020, 2 radio telescopes detected an intense pulse of radio waves, and they only lasted just a millisecond, but they left some astronomers astonished. The reason for this is because it was the first time a fast radio burst had been detected that close to Earth. The signal was located 30,000 light years away from Earth, which places it in our Milky Way galaxy. It also apparently was extremely difficult to miss these radio waves as well. The Canadian Hydrogen Intensity Mapping Experiment, or CHIME for short, and the Survey for Transient Astronomical Radio Emission 2, or STARE-2 for short, explained that it was in fact so easy to pick up that CHIME wasn't even looking in its direction, and it was still so easy to detect because it was loud and clear right in their peripheral vision, and STARE-2 also saw it clearly, even though, according to Kiyoshi Masui, assistant professor of physics at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, it's only a set of a few radio antennae literally made out of cake pans. Well, it looks like whatever the cause for this signal, something or someone perhaps really wanted us to see it. Or maybe it's just a strange coincidence and is just part of the mysteries of space and our galaxy. In our number 6 spot today, we have Saturn's rings. Saturn is well known for its impressive and stunning rings. I mean, they are the most extensive out of all of the planets in our solar system, and while seeing photos and diagrams is lovely, meeting the rings in person might not be so much of a pleasant experience. The rings consist of a ton of particles that range in size from micrometers to meters, and they are mostly made up of water ice, but they have some trace components of rocky material as well. In December of 2016, the Cassini spacecraft, which spent years studying Saturn and its icy moons, flew through one of these impressive rings, and the spacecraft's radio and plasma wave science instrument was able to pick up the sound of what crossing one of these rings sounds like. At first, it's just the regular staticky sound of being close to the planet. But then, as the crossing happens, things get a little louder and a little more rocky. The influx in sound is due to the particles bombarding the craft as it flies through the air. It is incredibly cool to hear this and get a bit of a closer look into what it's like to be near the planet, but it's also just another perfect example of how terrifying and relentless space can really be. In our number 5 spot today, we have the BLC-1. As astronomers were searching for the existence of life beyond our planet, they spotted something that piqued their interest. This was a radio signal that has yet to be explained that was coming from the direction of the star that is closest to the Sun, Proxima Centauri. The reason why this specific radio signal was so exciting and promising is because the star has at least 2 planets that orbit it, and one is thought to be temperate and rocky like Earth. The observations in which they picked up these signals took place between April and May of 2019, and they were detected by Breakthrough Listen, which is a decade-long search for alien broadcasts. They were using Australia's Parkes Observatory when they made the discovery. They explained that throughout their research, every now and then finding something strange is expected, but this detection was more unusual because it was a strange discovery that required them to then begin planning next steps, which does not happen very often. In our number 4 spot today, we have the Lorimer burst. This is a fast radio burst that was detected in 2007, and it was named after the person who spotted it, Duncan Lorimer. Well, actually, it was discovered when Duncan assigned his student David Narkevic to look through archival data taken in 2001 by the Parkes radio dish in Australia. After analyzing this data, it was found that there was a, quote, 30 Jansky dispersed burst that occurred on July 24, 2001. This burst was less than 5 milliseconds long, and it was located just 3 degrees from the small Magellanic Cloud. It still isn't quite clear what caused this signal, but it's thought that perhaps it might have been a singular event event, such as a supernova. In our number 3 spot today we have the solar system exit. What we're about to listen to isn't a real-time space recording, but it is an audiograph of the Voyager's plasma wave science observations that spanned several months between 2012 and 2013. The readings are important because this is the time when scientists believe that the Voyager left our solar system's heliopause, making it the first human-made object to leave our solar system. It's a huge step for science and space exploration, but the sounds that accompany it are anything but comforting. I mean, come on. That horror movie style shrieking sound on the way out into deep space isn't exactly what we want to hear. I'm not exactly sure what the source of the sound is, but let's just all hope that it isn't something sinister. In our number 2 spot today we have the WOW signal. In August of 1977 there was a radio telescope at Ohio State University that detected a strange signal. The radio picked up a pulse of radiation that was super unusual and was coming from somewhere by the constellation of Sagittarius. The signal lasted for 37 seconds and it has been commonly referred to as the WOW signal because of the fact that astronomers observing it were so shocked at the time that they wrote WOW on the printout from the telescope. This signal was so shocking because it was in a band of radio frequencies that are internationally banned on Earth. There are a multitude of natural sources for radiation in space that would cover a multitude of frequencies, so there are scientists who are skeptical that this could be proof of alien life, but skepticism doesn't mean it should be ruled out. Maybe this signal came from a huge astronomical event, or perhaps intelligent alien life with a very powerful transmitter who are trying to contact us. At the end of the day, the signal was detected in 1977 and we still don't know exactly where it's coming from or why it exists, so who's to say for sure. In our number 1 spot today we have the Venus signal. For many years we have been trying to figure out just how Earth and Venus turned out to be so different. Venus is Earth's closest neighbor and they're quite similar in size and density, but that's about it, to be truthful. Venus has a thick, toxic atmosphere that is filled with carbon dioxide. There are thick yellow clouds of sulfuric acid that trap heat on the planet, which has caused temperatures that are hot enough to melt lead. It's the hottest planet in our solar system, and it's not even the closest one to the sun. That is all exactly why, during a brief swing by Venus, when NASA's Parker Solar Probe detected a radio signal that was signifying the spacecraft had flown through the planet's upper atmosphere, it was exceptionally interesting. This was the first direct measurement of the atmosphere of Venus in about 30 years, and it showed that it was significantly different from before. A new study published showed that Venus's upper atmosphere undergoes some interesting and confusing changes over a solar cycle, which is the sun's 11-year activity cycle. This could potentially give us clues as to how and why the Earth and Venus are so different. Because of the harsh climate on the planet, spacecrafts have only been able to survive at most for a couple hours there, so there is still so much mystery surrounding what exactly goes on Venus.
Starting off this countdown, we have the gamma ray burst. In 2012, researchers found evidence that back in the Middle Ages, a massive blast of gamma radiation hit Earth. What they still don't know is what could have caused this. To give you an example of how big this blast was, if it happened nowadays, it would have destroyed every single satellite there is out there. Not only that, if it had happened closer to Earth, it would have literally destroyed the entire ozone layer and then life on Earth as we know it. So yeah, it was crazy strong. It exerted an incredible amount of energy. Now, what could have caused this? Well, there are a couple of theories. One was that it was a result of 2 black holes colliding. 2, it was a result from 2 neutron stars merging, or 3, some sort of massive explosion took place within the Milky Way. Either way, let's hope that it never happens again, and it doesn't happen close to Earth, or else we're doomed. Coming in at number 9, we have the solar winds. This is a terrifying sound that was captured by NASA satellites, and then they literally uploaded it to SoundCloud as part of their spooky Halloween playlist, and it's indeed spooky. Just listen to it. Obviously, it's mixed with other solar sounds, but it's still creepy. This is said to be the sound of solar winds passing by the satellites. They combined it all together and made this horrifying soundtrack. I'd rather they not. But I will say though, put headphones on and close your eyes and listen to it, the raindrop sounds are quite soothing to the ears, as weird and as creepy as they sound. Moving on to number 8, we have the Cassini spacecraft. The Cassini spacecraft was the 4th space probe to visit Saturn and the first to enter its orbit. And when it did, it picked up some weird signals. The signals were then converted into an audio file and shared online for us all to hear. Dude, I don't know what's going on with Saturn, but even scientists agreed that the sounds they recorded from Saturn are horrifying. Coming in at number 7, we have the Sun. The next signal was recorded from none other than our light and heat source, the Sun. The Stanford Experimental Physics Lab took data from the European Space Agency and NASA and turned it into this sound. This is the sound of the Sun. Waves are constantly traveling and bouncing around inside the Sun, and this is the sound of it. Now, this isn't so bad compared to the other sounds from space that we heard today, but there's a crazy theory that this is some sort of message. Like if we were to sonify a bunch of other sounds from the solar system and manipulate the sounds, maybe we'll be able to decipher this message from like the sun gods, or I don't even know. Moving on to number 6, we have the FRBS. So we're going to be looking at FRBS, or fast radio bursts. Scientists are constantly tracking these strange blasts, trying to figure out where they're coming from and what's causing it. Well, in April of 2020, one astronomer found an FRB coming from within our own galaxy for the first time. They examined it and found that it was coming from a magnetar called SGR 1935-2154. It's a mouthful. This in fact was the first evidence that magnetars can produce radio waves powerful enough to be detected. The proximity of the burst made it appear really bright. In fact, one of the researchers said, and I quote, "It is much brighter than any other radio object in space, by a large margin." In fact, this burst had energy about 3 times more than the energy that is emitted from the sun every second. It's kind of intense and crazy how powerful that signal was. And we still haven't fully figured out what it means. So, aliens. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the roar of Jupiter. In June of 2016, NASA's Juno spacecraft crossed the boundary of Jupiter's magnetic field. What they captured sounds horrifying. They call it the bow shock. Bow shock is when the supersonic solar wind is heated and slowed by Jupiter's magnetosphere. It can be compared to a sonic boom on Earth. Let's listen to it. They named that the roar of Jupiter. Now, that's not even the creepy sound. The next day, they captured something even worse. That is the sound of the crossing of the magnetopause, which is the boundary between the sun's magnetic field and Jupiter's magnetic field. And at number 4 today we have the blinking stars. Now let's change it up a bit. This next signal is not one that you can listen to, but it's a one that you can see. Back in 2016, a group of Canadian astronomers saw 234 stars blinking at the same time. Now this is very odd. How is it that such a large amount of stars are blinking all together at the exact same time? One of the astronomers, Eric Trotter, is convinced that the blinking stars are a signal from aliens. He thinks that they are using some type of laser to communicate with us. They are flashing these lasers all at the same time to get our attention. So does that mean that they have 234 lasers, or just, I don't even know. But either way, this is really odd, and we still don't know what caused it or what it means. Moving on to number 3, we have the quasi-crystal. This is something that crashed down onto Earth in 1979 Siberia. When it was first dug up, people were like, okay, it's just a hunk of rock. But no. Little did they know that it was something way more advanced. The quasi-crystal had 60 points of rotational symmetry that seemed to be perfectly made by technology that is unknown to humans. This isn't something that could naturally form in nature as far as we know. It looks as if this was created by some sort of alien race and then launched out into space to educate another species on the ways of advanced technology. So far, we have discovered no way to replicate this type of structure whatsoever. Also, this crystal dates back to 4.5 billion years ago, so it's really freaking strange. Is it true? Could it have been sent from another species? Coming in at number 2, we have the screams from Ganymede. Over the years, astronomers have recorded a number of freaky sounds from Jupiter's moon Ganymede. This sound I'm about to share with you is what was recorded when a spacecraft flew by Jupiter's moon. Honestly sounds like aliens talking to each other and then using some weird electronic device to send out beeping signals, like maybe it's a message. But that's not the worst part. They captured what sounds like someone screaming. That's horrifying. It sounds like someone yelling out in pain. Another time astronomers were shocked by the sounds from Ganymede were when they converted the chorus waves around the planet and moons into sound. Again, it sounds very frightening and bizarre, as if someone is trying to tell us something. And in our number 1 spot today we have Proxima Centauri. A number of scientists are dedicated to finding and investigating alien life. In fact, they believe that a signal from a nearby star was sent by aliens. Basically, they received a narrow beam of radio waves coming from the direction of Proxima Centauri, a red dwarf star 4.2 light years away from Earth. It's the nearest star to the Sun. They claim that this signal is the first serious candidate since the WOW signal. If you don't know what the WOW signal is, I talked about it in part 1, so check it out. Anyways, let's listen to what they recorded. Scientists have yet to discover what was causing the signal. Now, that high-pitched buzzing sound continues on for a long time, then all of a sudden it changes very abruptly. Like, what the actual hell was that? I don't know, and I never want to hear it again. What makes things creepier is that at least 2 planets orbit this star. Those planets are believed to be habitable for certain life forms. So maybe something is out there living on those planets and sending us signals.